my goal as a player from day to day is to basically try to make fewer mistakes than I did the previous day. If I can do that, that's a win for me, regardless of what rank I am. What's going on, everybody? It's Childish. We're back at it again with another Summoners War video. Today we're going to be talking about RTA, the format in and of itself, and talking about some of the key factors that basically determine how well we can do in RTA. And then, of course, out of those key factors, which one of the ones do I value the most, okay? It's definitely going to be a surprise, but you'll have to just wait and see to the very end, right? And then, of course, at the end of the video, we'll talk about a couple of units that I recently changed, just given the fact of what I've kind of learned along the way. And hopefully you guys can understand my thought process in those changes, right? So first and foremost here, and again, I'm going to incorporate 3 out of the 4 topics basically into one like little category, because this is something that it's not going to be any surprise if you guys are relatively new to the game, or even if you have been playing the game for quite some time and have been transitioning into the RTA world, okay? Those 3 things are going to be units, runes, and synergy, right? And I know you guys are like, oh my goodness, I've heard this so many times, Childish, why you keep incorporated? Because a lot of the times when we think about all the advice that we ask among, our players, our friends, or whatever the case may be, it all kind of stems down to those 3 topics, okay? So we'll go ahead and start off with the units first. When it comes to RTA, you guys already understand that while there's a wide variety of units that we can incorporate, there are certain strong units, or essentially meta units out there, that provide so many different aspects in their kit. It's just hard not to consider them a possible unit in your core team, okay? So obviously when it comes to your account, it's going to be very dependent on what you have, but you're going to be looking at the units that essentially rank higher than the others, depending on what you currently have and of course what your opponent is bringing. Now the next topic is going to be runes, right? And so how many times have you guys heard any YouTuber, streamer, anybody in your, like, just a guildmate, a friend or whatnot, you're like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to incorporate this PvP comp, I don't know why my Necropolis B10 isn't working, and they take, you're thinking they're going to take like 10 minutes to look at your account, right? And they spend 60 seconds on it, and they're like, hey bro, fix your runes. Your runes need to be better. Okay, next person, right? They just kind of push it to the side. You're like, what's going on here? Like, what's the deal? Like, obviously I have this going for me and that going for me, but they start to look at it a little bit more closely, and they realize the rune quality of your units is just not where it needs to be if you're trying to create a speed composition or whatever the case may be. Again, that's the one thing that if there's anything that you've heard over the past like 4 years you've been playing this game, again, if you're a new player, you're probably not 4 years, but you know what I mean, right? Is runes. The quality of the runes determines how effectively well you can do in everything, every aspect of the game. Obviously we're talking about RTA, but every aspect of the game, right? And so when it comes to the units that we talk about with respect to RTA, sure, we can have all the meta units out there, but obviously you just can't throw in meta units left and right. You have to have the runes to back them up. You have to have the high quality. You have to have the time invested into this game to get those runes to make your units work well with one another, right? So, and that kind of stems into the next topic here, units, runes, and synergy. So let's say you got all the meta units. Let's say you got maybe not meta units, but you have high quality runes and you incorporate them into a composition, right? If your units are not synergized well, if you don't have a plan of action with those 5 main units that you're trying to incorporate in RTA, your outcome is not going to be how you want it. And let me stop you right there, because I know what everybody's going to say. I'm going to say the same thing. RNG, right? It doesn't matter what's the units, the runes, the synergy, like all that. It doesn't matter anything, Childish. Like I just got beaten by a violent proc here or there or whatnot. But here's the thing about RNG: the door swings both ways. Okay, so regardless of how unlucky we feel we get, the fact of the matter is that the majority of the time we always remember those moments in time where we have the unlucky fight or battle or unlucky violent proc or whatever, but we definitely don't remember all the opportunities where RNG worked in our favor in order to get us the win, right? So it goes both ways, whether we feel like it's going to be it's not always in our favor. Honestly, it's a pretty balanced thing. I can't even begin to lie to you guys right now that if you guys see me in RTA, I constantly get lucky in Guild Wars and RTA. It happens all the time, but then there's those moments where I get lucky. So let's take a second to throw RNG out the window and talk about synergy. Regardless of how RNG can affect your game, when the units and runes are set in place, if you have your team synergized extremely well, you will do way better than you can ever imagine, okay? And so I want to give a huge shout out once again to Dreams Joseph, okay? Because when we talk about the units, the rune quality and whatnot, this is something that we already know the top end players have a ton of. But when it comes to some of the people that you see in the higher ranks here, a lot of them have the extreme meta monsters, even some of the LD Nat 5s that were never good up to obtain. Well, Dreams Joseph, of course, is one of those people that has does not have the all these like meta LD Nat 5s. What he was able to do it with a very limited account there. And again, kind of stemming back to episode 7 of Educate and Dominate, talking about Baron, that one line that he basically said in his video was something that myself, as well as a lot of people, have kind of utilized, like just kind of put in our minds as to use for everything that we do, right? Build teams, not units here. Figure out a way for you to get the edge on your opponent. And for Baron at the time, the reason why he was able to get an edge on his opponents in the arena is because he focused all of his runes on a specific core amount of units there, and the quality of the runes or quality of the units were just outrageous. Even though he has other players out there, alongside of him that are farming as much as him and doing as much as him, but he did not try to, expand his, unit base. He focused on certain units that provide so many different features, and he incorporated it into his team with the high rune quality and was able to get the job done. So again, the synergy is super important, but even going back to those things, the units, the runes, and the synergy, you guys are going to be surprised is what I'm going to say right now. Okay. Here's the deal. And I'm going to be frank with you guys. The RTA format for me, my personal experience, right? I started like everybody else in season 1, had a blast doing it, and was just, having fun. I wasn't really too focused on it because me personally, you guys already know, I'm part of the Epic Fail family, and we've always been focused on, Guild Wars, and of course after the Siege was incorporated, we started, really focusing on Guild Wars Siege, not only creating or focusing on specific units that do well in Guild Wars, but some additional units that we can incorporate in our Siege, because we can't use duplicate units, right? So when I focused on those teams, obviously the RTA format was a really fun thing for me, but it wasn't my main focus. So my prioritization of my runes, my units, was all revolved around those other PvP formats here. But the one thing that I have basically realized, outside of even units versus synergy, that basically determines so much when it comes to RTA is experience. Okay, so if you guys already checked out the thumbnail, I'm gonna be 100% completely honest with you. That thumbnail is the first time in however long RTA has been going on. What is it now? Maybe almost a year and a half, 2 years. That is the first time that I actually completed all my wings in a day. I know it sounds really hard because I've done, a variety of, RTA, we've done commentate, we've done all this stuff in the PvP world. And you would have think even being able to connect with a lot of different PvP players, I would have taken the time and just like grinded out those wings. But, obviously RTA format, it's very, there's a lot of time invested into it. It's not something you can knock out relatively quickly. You have to be really focused on it. You just can't auto your way. And so there was a lot of things that kind of led me aside to not really clearing those wings. But when it comes to me as a competitive player wanting to move up, I realized that regardless of how many times I can complain about the lack of meta units or the lack of rune quality or the synergistic compositions that I can bring, depending on what I see, the experience to me was everything. I've been sitting at Conquer 2 for a very long time, Conquer 2, Conquer 3, but I think mostly Conquer 2. And it wasn't until this last session where I basically did 30 wings together. I essentially dropped all the way to Fighter 3 and brought myself back up to Conquer 3 in those 30 wings. And so the crazy thing about it is, and I wish I had some gameplay to kind of share with you, is that basically what you're already kind of expecting when it comes to this answer. It wasn't until, regardless of what I had seen in my account and what I think would work correctly, it wasn't until I had an opportunity to experience what people are generally first picking versus what I'm laying out, or sorry, not what they're generally first picking and what I choose to lay out depending on what they're first picking, right? Or what they what they're trying to do currently, what they're trying to counter when I'm trying to go aggressive. I'm basically, even though I have specific units that I'm looking to, incorporate, obviously, the second, third, fourth, fifth units, those may change depending on what the opponent is doing, how he is reading, the picks that I do. The pick and ban phase for me is just been it's been an extremely hard thing. I feel like I need like 15 more seconds in every single round, but that's the truth about it. Experience is going to get you extremely far, and experience will allow you to get the best of your opponent if RNG doesn't play like just an upside role. Again, I know I'm talking about RNG, but you know what I'm saying. Like, experience allows you to make those really good picks on the fly, and honestly can be the determining factor in the outcome of the match if you pick and ban correctly. Again, I constantly make mistakes throughout my RTA experience, and if there's one thing that I've basically been focused on now, and I hope you guys can use this as a reason for you to kind of improve, is that regardless of how we look at things as a newer or up and coming player in RTA, let's not like dwell on the aspect of RNG or the lack of units or whatnot. Let's kind of how do I say this? Let's go ahead and take advantage of all these experience that we have and all the mistakes that we made, and essentially trying to learn from those mistakes. Okay, my goal in RTA is not to get the most wins, win streaks, or whatever the case may be. My goal as a player from day to day is to basically try to make fewer mistakes than I did the previous day. If I can do that, that's a win for me, regardless of what rank I am, because I know that once I start improving my account, the units, the runes, the synergy of my teams, like the knowledge that I've learned over time is going to be extremely beneficial, and that's the big thing that I want to get out for you guys today. I really have learned quite a bit, just again, being around other endgame players, or just basically being around doing more RTA wings, and being able to basically realize, like, I got a lot of mistakes going on. Like, I got a lot of things to fix. So I'm going to finish off the video with just sharing 2 units. We have a lot of units that we have used quite a bit in RTA, but I don't want to spend too much time. This could go for like a 2-year long video, but I do want to just kind of talk about a couple of units that, if you guys have been seeing me on my channel showcasing it in Guild Wars or Siege or whatnot, you're going to know that there's going to be a couple of changes made, and I want to explain to you why, right? So one of the big ones that I want to talk about is Ethna. Now, Ethna, if you guys remember her, I got a lot of praise on Ethna because I used that fundamental concept of stats over sets. And even though I couldn't get the despair set, I couldn't get the either like despair set or violence set that I wanted to mess around with. I basically built her in such a fashion with some high efficient runes that allowed me to get her 26k HP. Like I think it was about 2k, over 2k attack, almost 1600 defense, and again, a high amount of critical rate, high amount of critical damage. I'll probably showcase a picture if I can, but you guys will see. And I got a lot of praise for it because in Guild Wars or whatever, I was using it as obviously a DPS unit, but I was also using it as kind of a tank versus some of the pernas that I have to deal with, or other fire-based units that are pretty strong, right? And so the thing about it with RTA is that we look at Ethna and she's like, oh, she has a ton of potential when it comes to the amount of damage that we could do. But when it comes to RTA, the biggest thing that I learned is that this unit, while we can make an argument for other units that may be stronger than others, this unit is an enabler. This unit allows you to create so many additional turns over time by means of this second skill, getting the critical rate and whatnot, that it allows me to essentially set up any one of my other units to kind of follow through it in order to do some really good damage defense-wise, or if I got enough speed on it, I can essentially lock down a unit that I'm going to be having trouble dealing with in the RTA or on their composition, by that third skill and getting the strip here. So again, this is one of the things that it was super hard for me to break away, because I was just so addicted to the concept of, ooh, it's super tanky, it does a ton of damage, and it had a decent amount of speed. Well, the fact of the matter is that while yes, it was on will, and yes, it may not have had despair, it really didn't do much for me if it was my slowest unit on my team, and it actually was one of my slowest units on my team. All my units are basically in the vicinity of 210 and 230, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little, plus or minus a little bit outside of like my Swift sets and whatnot. But this was one of the things that I realized that I had to make the change if I wanted to be any more like synergistic, if I wanted to use her and have her synergize well with my units. So getting back in line, we're still working on trying to get the despair set on, but I want to show just real quick kind of where we're sitting at. Again, I'm trying to keep her relatively tanky because, again, everybody knows the value of her, what she can bring to the table. But I obviously, since I know that I'm not going to be competitive with the speeds that I'm currently going up against in Conquer 2, Conquer 3, and possibly Guardian 1 in the future, I know that I'm going to have to incorporate Will, and I'm looking to make sure that I not only have her fast and tanky, but I have enough critical rate to constantly get this this attack bar manipulation here. So again, is this where I want her to be? It definitely is not, but it is an improvement over time. And I did not realize, regardless of how many people I have watched played RTA, right? It only took me more times than not to basically utilize her in my compositions versus an opponent which I clearly outpicked. And I still did not be able to take advantage of how many turns this unit can get, especially into those later stages of the game where we only have a couple of units, and the value of the turn bar manipulation that could be had from this unit if you ruin her really, really good. So again, she's not where she needs to be, but we're making some improvements here, okay? And then last one, which is going to be another embarrassing thing to make here, is Tessarion. Now, Tessarion for me is it's an interesting topic here, because I, like a lot of you guys, when we first got into the game, we looked at the 3 Ifrits and we're like, oh my goodness, Theomar is bae. I'm going to be using Theomars all day, every day. All I want to do is pull at Theomars and I can quit. That's what I did when the initial, like when it originally came out there, the Ifrits, all I wanted to do was get a Theomars. I got the Theomars after, I think it was the second time. No, maybe it's the second or third time after a couple of Akama mirrors, right? And I got it, and I wasn't even focused on Tessarion because I'm just, it doesn't matter. I got Theo. I can do everything now. Like, I'm the best. I can do it, right? Well, Tessarion for me was probably, out of all the like Nat 5s that I've recently gotten, Tessarion to me is one of the true reasons why I was able to be relatively competitive versus some of the meta monsters that have specific passes. Most notably, some of the death prevention monsters like Vanessa or Triana and whatnot. He's definitely one that's going to allow me to do things that I wasn't able to do because of the fact that I can bypass these passes that people are bringing. So I eventually did pull them, and mind you, again, it was like maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It's pretty sad to admit, but I want to keep it real with you guys. I pulled them 3 to 4 months ago because of I did the 5 efforts or whatnot, and I got all the pieces for a scroll. And I went ahead and built him. Obviously you guys are already expecting this, like a violent revenge or possibly a violent will if you know you're going to get outspeed. But I personally did not have the revenge runes to do it, and the will would have made him a lot slower and a lot squishier. So I opted for violent shield, and this is not something that I think a lot of people are going to do, right? Because it's just not everyone is like, you go violent revenge, you go violent will. What's going on, right? Violent shield for me has been super important just because of where I sit. Again, analyzing everything that I've currently talked about, the big 3 factors there, the units, the runes, the synergy. The rune factor for me is huge because I understand that while I'm learning my account even more so, I'm still just not as competitive as I have been in the past. Everything has changed when my son was born. I didn't spend a lot of time farming as much as I need to be, but I definitely understand now that I got some catching up to do, and I just need to work with what I got. And when it comes to Tessarion, when I incorporate him into my team, I know that obviously I'm going to be utilizing him to take out some unit or try to deal with some unit that has that passive, right? But if he actually makes it past that pick and ban phase, let's say they have some kind of aggressive composition and I'm running some kind of immunity, maybe like a Molong or like a Molong Okeanos Ganymede, and let's say I ban Molong, right? Basically banking. I take away their AoE stripper. I'm basically banking on them missing their Okeanos reset or something like that, because I don't want their Okeanos Ganymede combo to reset a unit and do well. So, or basically control the match, right? So throwing Tessarion on like a Violent Shield set, while it's not quote unquote optimal, it allows other units on my lineup to essentially refrain from their opponents or refrain from their Okeanos Aganimi combo, being able to take away my Burial and get the reset in, right? And when you think about the Saurian, he has the defense break and whatnot, but he has his passive himself. While I leave him open for attack bar manipulation or a reset, ultimately that's not going to be a huge determining factor in how the plan, the plan of attack is going to go, because there's not like his passive is going to connect with them regardless if I have my second skill or first skill. So my thought process was, if I get him on a violent shield set that gives me the stats that I'm looking for, which it did, I can essentially make it a little bit harder for some of these aggro CC comps to go after me, and essentially if they can't lock me down those first couple of turns, I can just essentially out bruiser them, out sustain them, and eventually get the win. So there's a ton of units that I want to go over, but I honestly just don't want to carry this video any longer than it has, because honestly the topic of experience is something that we don't want to hear, but we definitely need to hear. You have to take the time to spend in the RTA, get those wings and practice as much as you can, so that you can understand your account that much better and basically be able to counter what you generally see in the meta. That's really all I got for you guys. Again, I apologize if this video went a little bit longer, but I just wanted to share my experience with you because it's 100% real. For playing this game now for 4 years, and of course the RTA for my 2 years, I have still a lot to learn in this game, but if I can learn just a little bit more than I did the previous day, that honestly is a win for me, and I just want to share my experience with you guys, okay? So that's going to be it, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's your boy Childish, your Childish Plays, checking out. Take care, and we will see you all in the next one. I'm out.